Hey viewers, it's Tuesday on the Pagan Perspective. I'm your host Kara, and this week is the start of our Death Month. Firstly, I apologize for my appearance. It is miserably hot in Ohio right now for some odd reason, and I had to come outside because if I was inside, all you would hear is the buzzing of all of our fans because we don't have air conditioning. So I'm outside dying in the heat. Oh, appropriate! Death Month. Awesome. Okay, I'm not funny. The first week of Death Month, we're going to talk about, I've got notes, we're going to talk about funeral traditions, burial rites, cremation, maybe what we think death means, celebration versus mourning, and maybe what we personally want to happen when we die. I've been to a couple funerals, and the tradition in the United States, I don't know if it's a regional thing or if it's a religious thing or just, I don't know why. It's pretty much accepted that you wear black to a funeral to mourn because the style is to mourn the dead. Crying is normal at wakes and funerals and things like that. One of the first things that I found out when I started studying Wiccan beliefs that really stood out to me was that I don't know what source this was from or anything. I don't know if it's all sources or just this one that I read, but wherever I read it said that Wiccans like to wear white because it's really more of a celebration of just the cycle of life continuing. I really liked that idea, and I've decided that I asked my mother at her funeral if I would be allowed to wear white, and she said I could do that. And I will probably request that people who want to do that at mine. Hello, Sierra! The cat has joined me. Speaking of my mother dying, she always says that she wants to be cremated. And Kyle, this is going to be the weird part for you because you said if you were cremated you would want to not be sitting in your urn somewhere. Well, my mom wants to be partially spread over like a favorite place or in the mountains or like somewhere she's never been that's really beautiful like that. But she also wants, before that happens, she wants 2 little tiny like pendant-sized vials to be filled with her ashes for me and my little brother. Maybe it's a little bit creepy, but I feel like I'll get used to it because I think I'll really like to have that when she's not around because you all know I love my mama. I don't know if I want to be cremated. There's something about being a witch and being voluntarily burned and the whole like being burned at the stake thing before that kind of weirds me out, but so I don't know, we'll see. But some other interesting funeral rites that I know about include things like Viking funerals, funeral pyres. My ex-boyfriend was really into Irish culture, so he was always talking about the really crazy celebratory drunken wakes that the Irish have, and if he were here, I would let him talk to you about that. But what I actually want to talk about today, this might end up being a slightly longer video, is I did some research my freshman year of college for my music colloquium. Actually, we had to do world music topics. We had to go to our library, pick out a CD that was world music. One of the CDs I chose was music from Albania, and it happened to be the album that included their death songs. And I really liked this one it was a death lament, and in the booklet to the CD, I'll put a link to the Amazon article of the CD so you can see what I'm referencing, but I don't have the CD here because I'm not at school. But in the booklet to the CD about the death lament song, it said that the woman who was performing the song had requested that she get a cross and wear a black veil over her face while singing it, and she had to go into another room with just her and the people who were recording it because she had recently lost a son to some sort of accident, and she had another son who was alive and well, and it was believed that if you sing a death song around someone who is healthy, they will have a risk of dying. So that's also why she wanted to cover her face and things like that. She didn't want to be identified for singing this song. So I'm putting a link to the Amazon page in the sub bar so that you can listen to that song. Vaj Team, something like that, starts with a V. It's also called Death Lament. And the tradition in Albania obviously is mourning. Crying, pulling out their hair and scratching their face was popular years ago, not so much anymore, but definitely crying, especially for the females, not so much for the males. Sometimes professional female mourners were hired to mourn for the dead, which I think is kind of crazy, but I don't live in Albania. The mourning would continue for 40 days after the death and be repeated at intervals afterward. Like everyone would gather in the person's house and mourn, and it would go on for 40 days. And I feel like that would be really inconvenient if a lot of people died pretty close together, because I feel like you'd always be mourning at a wake or something. And they do believe in an afterlife and that you're going to end up somewhere like a paradise sort of thing, so they did the whole tradition of burying the dead with things that were important to them and putting coins in their mouth and things that would help them on their journey into the afterlife. The other oral presentation that I did for this class was on Indonesia, the island island of Sulawesi, specifically, their music. And while I was researching their music, I learned a little bit about their death practices as well. So in Toraja, in Sulawesi, it's a very delayed ceremony. When someone dies, they don't have a funeral or anything right away. They actually wait months or maybe even years until the family gets enough finances together to actually host the funeral that the person deserved. And it was one of those where, according to the status of the person in their life, their funeral would be bigger to accommodate that. They would sacrifice water buffalo for the person, and the more powerful the person was, the more water buffalo would be sacrificed, etc. They also believed in a gradual death, where like when you die, you're not dead right away. There's like 4 stages, the first of which is when you die, you actually go into like a sleeping mode, and then there are 2 in the middle that I can't remember, and finally you are considered a dead person after a while. The Toraja people bury their dead in coffins or put them in caves. Sometimes they would just like carve a tomb in a cave, or they'd put a coffin inside a cave. They have a lot of cliff burials. And sometimes they would have hanging burials, either by hanging coffins from trees, if it was like a baby or an infant or something like that, or hanging them in the cliffs. And the other thing, the thing that I really found cool that my class absolutely thought I was morbid for, was that if a baby died from the time they were a newborn to like 2 weeks old, their parents would like hollow out a little space in a tree and put the baby in the tree and cover it over with cloth and sticks, and then as the tree grows up, the bark would grow around the baby, making the baby a part of a living tree forever. Because they believe that if the baby is part of something that is living, the baby's still alive, basically. I wanted to show you like the pictures, but they were in the CD booklet, and since I don't have the CD, I was looking online, and I finally found this woman who has a blog and a YouTube channel. It's called Travels with Sheila, and she went to Sulawesi and actually has video of the baby tree and some hanging cliffs. So I'm going to put a link in the sub bar as well for her blog entry when she went to Sulawesi, and it has pictures and 2 videos that I want you guys to check out. That's all I wanted to talk about. I really hope someone else this week talks about Irish funerals and like Viking funerals and things like that. The rest of this month we'll be talking about the stuff that happens after death, like the afterlife and reincarnation and cool stuff like that, and then we'll talk about where we think we're working to at the end of the month. So I hope you guys enjoy that. Have a nice life.